If one day you realize you're not only tired of learning English, but also tired of the person sitting next to you, tired of the marriage you once believed would last forever, then the real question isn't, do I still love? But, do I still choose to stay and listen? This video doesn't teach perfect English. It tells the story of one very real week of my marriage in the United States, where love almost broke, words became slow, and that slowness quietly saved both our relationship and my motivation to keep learning English. One ordinary American week. Imagine waking up on a Monday in the United States and realizing that nothing is wrong, and that's exactly what feels heavy. No shouting, no dramatic fights, no slammed doors. Just quiet breakfasts, polite good mornings, and two people moving through the same house like well-trained roommates. That was how my week began. And strangely, that silence felt louder than any argument. When love goes quiet, your brain starts filling the gaps with doubts, the same way it does when you stop practicing English and suddenly every word feels far away. This past week of my marriage in America didn't look like a movie. It looked like real life. Work stress. Bills. A calendar packed too tight. Evenings where we sat on the same couch, scrolling on different phones, sharing the same Wi-Fi but not the same emotional bandwidth. If you've ever tried to practice English after a long day and thought, I'll do it tomorrow, you already understand this feeling. It's not resistance. It's exhaustion wearing a polite face. Here's something interesting about the brain. Neuroscience shows that when emotional energy drops, cognitive effort becomes expensive. Your brain starts saving power like a phone on low battery mode. That's why during stressful weeks, you don't want deep conversations, and you don't want to speak English out loud. Your nervous system is quietly saying, not now. Too much. And that's exactly what was happening in our home. One night, while washing dishes, I broke the silence with the safest English sentence I know. It's been a long day. Simple. Slow. Almost boring. My partner nodded and replied, yeah, really long. No poetry. No solutions. Just shared reality. And something shifted. Not magically, but noticeably. Studies in relationship psychology call this emotional mirroring. When two people name the same feeling, even with basic words, the brain releases a small dose of safety. That's the part most people miss when learning English. Fluency doesn't start with vocabulary lists. It starts with emotional permission. When you allow yourself to speak imperfectly, slowly, and honestly, your brain relaxes. The same rule applies to marriage. You don't repair distance with big speeches. You repair it with small, true sentences said at the right pace. Throughout this week, I stopped chasing meaningful talks and started choosing available moments. 5 minutes. One sentence. Sometimes just sitting quietly without trying to fix anything. Ironically, that's when words came back, both in English and in love. Not advanced words. Real ones. I'm tired. I miss you. Let's try again tomorrow. By Friday, nothing dramatic had changed. But something important had softened. The silence no longer felt like danger. It felt like space, space where learning, listening, and loving could slowly return. Basically, when you stop forcing progress, your nervous system stops fighting you, and honestly, that lesson alone was worth the entire week. When love goes quiet. Silence in a marriage doesn't arrive loudly. It slips in wearing comfortable clothes and reasonable excuses. You tell yourself you're just busy, just tired, just waiting for the right moment to talk. But days pass, and that moment never comes. This week, I noticed how quiet our home had become, not the peaceful kind, but the careful kind. The kind where every word is filtered, shortened, or swallowed. And strangely enough, it felt exactly like when you know some English, but you stop using it because you're afraid of saying the wrong thing. Psychologists say silence is often a protective behavior. When the brain senses emotional risk, it chooses avoidance over expression. That's not weakness. That's survival. In my marriage, silence wasn't a lack of love. It was love holding its breath. The same thing happens when you stop practicing English speaking. Your brain isn't lazy, it's trying to protect you from embarrassment, rejection, or feeling small. One evening, we sat at the kitchen table with 2 mugs of coffee that had already gone cold. No phones. No music. Just the hum of the refrigerator. I wanted to say something meaningful, something that would fix everything. But my mind went blank. So instead, I said a very small English sentence, slowly and carefully, "I don't know how to say this." And surprisingly, that sentence did more than any prepared speech ever could. Research in communication psychology shows that naming uncertainty lowers emotional threat. When you admit you don't have the right words, the pressure disappears. The conversation becomes human again. My partner looked at me and said, "That's okay. Just say it badly." And right there, love exhaled. This is a powerful lesson for learning English. You don't need confidence first. Confidence comes after repeated imperfect attempts. Silence feels safe, but it slowly increases distance, both in language and in relationships. Speaking, even awkwardly, signals trust. It tells the other person, "I'm still here. I'm still trying." Throughout the week, we practiced something unintentionally beautiful. Short sentences. Long pauses. No interruptions. Sometimes we spoke in English, sometimes not. The language didn't matter. The rhythm did. Slow speech gives the brain time to regulate emotion. That's neuroscience, not romance. When you slow down, your nervous system shifts from defense mode to connection mode. By midweek, the quiet between us started to change texture. It wasn't heavy anymore. It became curious. Gentle. Like the silence before someone chooses the next word carefully, not because they're afraid, but because they care. And that's the silence where growth lives. So if you're quiet right now, in love or in English, don't panic. Quiet doesn't mean it's over. It often means something important is waiting to be said, at a pace your heart can handle. Basically, silence isn't the enemy. Staying silent forever is. Marriage in simple words. There's a strange belief that important conversations require important language. Big emotions must be expressed with big words. But this week taught me the opposite. The most meaningful moments in my marriage didn't come from deep talks or perfectly structured sentences. They came from very simple words, spoken slowly, often in the middle of ordinary tasks. And honestly, That's exactly how real language learning works. 2.1 Afternoon. While folding laundry, my partner asked, "Are you okay today?" Not, "How are you feeling about us?" Not, "Where is this marriage going?" Just one soft question. My brain wanted to answer with something complex, something thoughtful. Instead, what came out was, "I feel heavy." That was it. 2 words. No explanation. And somehow, that was enough to open the door. From a cognitive perspective, simple language reduces emotional load. When you're stressed, your working memory shrinks. Complex sentences feel overwhelming. That's why during hard weeks, both couples and language learners struggle with expression. But simple words bypass that bottleneck. They travel faster. They land cleaner. They feel safer. Throughout this week, our conversations sounded almost childish from the outside. "I'm tired. I need space. Can we talk later?" Sometimes in English. Sometimes not. But the structure was always the same: short sentences, honest tone, slow pace. No dramatic conclusions. No pressure to resolve everything immediately. Relationship researchers call this low-demand communication. It keeps the emotional system regulated while maintaining connection. This is gold for English learners. You don't need advanced grammar to communicate real meaning. You need clarity and courage. Saying, "I don't understand," or "Can you say that again?" slowly, is not a failure. It's a relational skill. It tells the other person you value understanding more than appearing fluent. One evening, after a long day, I tried something intentional. I spoke only in short English sentences for 10 minutes. Not as an exercise, but as a way to stay present without emotional overload. Today was hard. I tried my best. I'm still here. My partner listened. No corrections. No fixing. Just presence. And something softened again. Neurologically, slow and simple speech activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the part responsible for safety and bonding. That's why couples who slow down their language feel closer. And that's why learners who stop chasing perfection start improving faster. Your brain learns best when it feels safe enough to make mistakes. By the end of the week, I realized something important. Love doesn't need impressive language. It needs usable language. The kind you can reach for when you're tired, unsure, and still choosing to stay. Basically, if your words are simple but true, they're already doing their job. Why stress changes everything? Stress doesn't announce itself. It sneaks into your body first, then quietly rewrites your behavior. This week, I noticed how stress, not lack of love, was the real problem in our marriage. Long work hours, mental pressure, small unresolved worries. None of them dramatic alone. But together, they slowly turned connection into effort. And when connection feels like effort, both love and language start shutting down. Neuroscience explains this brutally well. Under stress, your brain prioritizes survival over communication. Blood flow shifts away from the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for language, empathy, and reasoning, and toward areas focused on threat detection. In simple words, when you're stressed, your brain literally makes it harder to speak, listen, and care deeply. That's why during tense weeks, conversations feel clumsy and English words disappear from your mind like they were never there. One night this week, we tried to talk through a misunderstanding. It didn't go well. We interrupted each other. We defended instead of listening. Every sentence felt sharper than intended. Halfway through, I realized something important. We weren't arguing about the issue. We were both dysregulated. Two stressed nervous systems trying to connect is like two people shouting through thick glass. So we stopped. Not to avoid the problem, but to calm the system. I said a very basic sentence in English. Let's pause. We're both tired. That pause mattered. Research shows that even a short break, 5 to 10 minutes, can significantly lower cortisol levels. When cortisol drops, language returns. Empathy returns. Perspective returns. This applies directly to learning English. If you practice speaking while your body is tense, your brain associates the language with discomfort. Over time, you start avoiding it. But when you practice in calm states, slow breathing, low pressure, familiar topics, your brain builds positive associations. It learns faster. It remembers more. Throughout the week, we unintentionally redesigned our communication around stress awareness. No late-night heavy talks. No problem solving when hungry or exhausted. Short check-ins instead. Gentle timing. This wasn't avoidance. It was strategy. Marriage therapists call this state-first communication. You don't fix the content until the nervous system is ready. By Thursday, something shifted again. Our words became less reactive. Listening felt easier. Even silence felt less threatening. And interestingly, my English practice felt lighter too. Fewer mental blocks. Less self-judgment. More flow. The lesson was clear. Stress isn't just an emotional issue. It's a biological one. And once you respect that, everything changes. How you love, how you learn, how you speak. Basically, you don't need better words. You need a calmer body. The night we almost broke. There's always one night in a hard week that carries more weight than the others. Not because something dramatic happens, but because everything finally feels too heavy to carry quietly. For us, that night came near the end of the week. The house was dark. The day had drained us. And the distance between us felt undeniable. That was the moment when the thought appeared, soft but dangerous. Maybe this is where things start to fall apart. That we weren't yelling. We weren't blaming. That's what made it scarier. Emotional researchers say this is the most fragile stage in relationships, emotional disengagement. When people stop fighting, it doesn't mean peace. It often means hope is tired. I recognize that feeling immediately, because it's the same feeling many English learners have right before they quit. Not frustration. Not anger. Just quiet resignation. That night, I remember thinking, I don't even know how to explain what I feel. And then, almost instinctively, I said it out loud in English, very slowly. I feel lost right now. No metaphors. No details. Just truth. And something unexpected happened. My partner didn't respond with advice. They didn't defend. They just said, "Me too." Psychologically, shared vulnerability resets connection. When two people admit uncertainty at the same time, the power struggle disappears. The brain no longer looks for threats, it looks for alignment. That moment didn't solve our problems, but it stopped the emotional bleeding. And sometimes, that's the most important step. This is exactly how people give up on learning English. Not because they can't do it, but because they feel alone in the struggle. They think everyone else is progressing while they're stuck. But the truth is, almost everyone feels lost at some point. Progress resumes when that feeling is named, not hidden. That night, we didn't make promises. We didn't plan the future. We sat in the discomfort together. Slow breaths. Long pauses. A few simple sentences exchanged carefully, like fragile objects. Neuroscience calls this co-regulation, two nervous systems calming each other down through presence. It's powerful. And it's rare. Later, lying in bed, I realized something quietly profound. Love doesn't break when things are hard. It breaks when people stop letting themselves be seen while things are hard. Language works the same way. You don't lose fluency because you're bad at English. You lose it because you stop showing up imperfectly. By morning, nothing had magically healed. But the decision to stay, emotionally, verbally, humanly, had already been made. Basically, the night we almost broke was the night we chose not to disappear. Small repairs, not big talks. Most people think relationships are saved by big conversations. Long talks. Deep explanations. Emotional breakthroughs that last until 2 a.m. But this week taught me something quieter and far more realistic. What actually repaired our marriage wasn't a single powerful discussion. It was a series of very small repairs, repeated gently, without drama. The morning after that heavy night, nothing felt fixed. But instead of avoiding each other, we did something simple. We made coffee together. No analysis. No revisiting the pain. Just presence. I said, "Good morning." My partner smiled and replied, "Morning." That was it. And yet, that exchange mattered more than any apology speech. Relationship science calls these moments micro repairs. Small signals that say, "I'm still here. I'm not shutting you out." Our brains are wired to detect safety in consistency, not intensity. That's why grand gestures often fail to heal long-term disconnection. They spike emotion but don't retrain the nervous system. This principle translates perfectly to learning English. You don't improve by forcing long, exhausting practice sessions when you're already drained. You improve by showing up for 5 minutes. One sentence. One listening moment. One attempt to speak out loud, even if your pronunciation isn't great. Consistency creates safety. Safety creates growth. Throughout the rest of the week, we leaned into this idea. No, we need to talk energy. Just small check-ins. How's your day going? Do you need space? I'm here. Sometimes in English, sometimes not. The language choice didn't matter. The tone did. Slow. Soft. Unrushed, neuroscience backs this up. Repeated low-stress interactions strengthen neural pathways associated with trust and bonding. Over time, the brain learns that connection is safe again. And when connection feels safe, communication naturally expands. Words return. Curiosity returns. Humor returns. By the weekend, we noticed laughter sneaking back into the house. Nothing forced. Nothing planned. Just moments stacking quietly on top of each other. The same thing happens when you practice English gently. One day, you suddenly realize you're understanding more without trying so hard. Not because you pushed, but because you stayed. The biggest myth about both love and language is that they require constant intensity. They don't. They require commitment to small repairs when things feel slightly off. Basically, you don't rebuild a bridge in one day. You tighten one bolt at a time. Love is a daily practice. There's a quiet moment when you realize love isn't something you feel, it's something you do, especially on days when the feeling is tired. This week, that realization landed gently but firmly. Our marriage didn't survive because we suddenly felt inspired again. It survived because we practiced showing up, even when motivation was low. And that's exactly how real learning works too. Motivation is unreliable. Neuroscience confirms this in an unromantic way. The brain doesn't build habits through inspiration. It builds them through repetition in predictable conditions. That's why relying on feeling ready to practice English, or to reconnect with your partner, almost always fails. Readiness is a luxury. Practice is a decision. During this week, love looked extremely unglamorous. It looked like doing the dishes when I didn't want to talk. It looked like listening without interrupting. It looked like choosing simpler words instead of sharper ones. Sometimes, it looked like silence that stayed open instead of shutting down. These were not emotional highs. They were daily reps. One night, I deliberately practiced English out loud for just 3 minutes. Not to improve fluency, but to stay present. I described what I was doing. I'm tired. I'm washing dishes. Today was long. My partner listened and nodded. No corrections. No expectations. That tiny practice did 2 things at once. It kept English alive in my body, and it kept connection alive in the room. Behavioral psychology calls this identity reinforcement. Every small action sends a signal to your brain, this is who I am. Not someone who gives up when things get hard, but someone who continues gently. The same principle applies to marriage. You don't stay connected by dramatic declarations. You stay connected by repeated, ordinary acts of care. By the end of the week, I noticed something subtle. The effort felt lighter. Not because problems disappeared, but because the fear around them had softened. Practice creates familiarity. Familiarity creates safety. Safety creates room to grow. That's the real secret most people miss. You don't practice because things are good. You practice so things don't quietly fall apart. Basically, love and language don't ask for perfection. They ask for presence, again and again. What love walks with you? At some point, usually late at night, a quiet question shows up without asking permission. What will actually stay with me to the end? Not the plans. Not the promises. Not the perfect version of love we imagined when things were easy. This week, living inside a very real marriage in the United States, I understood the answer more clearly than ever. What walks with you isn't intensity. It's the love that knows how to walk slowly. By the end of this week, nothing looked dramatic from the outside. No big announcements. No turning points you'd post online. But inside, something fundamental had shifted. We stopped asking, how do we fix everything, and started asking, how do we stay present today? That question changes the body first. Shoulders drop. Breathing slows. The nervous system stops preparing for loss. Psychology calls this secure continuation. The idea that stability doesn't come from certainty about the future, but from repeated experiences of staying. Staying in conversations that are awkward. Staying when words are limited. Staying when English comes out broken, slow, imperfect. Staying when love feels more like effort than emotion. This is where learning English and marriage quietly merge. You don't carry forward vocabulary lists. You carry forward your relationship with the language. Do you associate it with pressure, or with permission? With judgment, or with patience? The same question applies to love. Do you experience it as a performance, or as a practice? One evening, before sleep, I said a final simple sentence in English, "We're still learning." It wasn't a motivational line. It was a factual one. Learning each other. Learning how to speak without hurting. Learning how to listen without fixing. Learning how to stay when leaving would feel easier. Neuroscience supports this idea in a grounded way. The brain strengthens what you repeat under calm conditions. Not what you promise under emotional highs. What you return to, again and again, without drama. That's what becomes automatic. That's what walks with you. So if you're watching this video because you feel tired of English, tired of trying, tired of carrying emotional weight alone, here's the quiet truth. You don't need to restart your life. You don't need to reinvent your love. You don't need to master English. You just need to keep one thing walking with you, the habit of showing up gently, speak slower. Love softer. Practice smaller. Stay longer than your fear wants you to, because in the end, what reaches the finish line with you isn't the version of yourself that tried hardest. It's the version that didn't leave.